been having all of these really vivid, or at least memorable dreams lately, consistently, for over a month now. This particular one that I had, it really got me to thinking, and I haven't really put it down. So in this particular dream, they were like zombies, but they didn't look like zombies at all. So you didn't have like that flesh rotting off, red eyes, trying to chase people down and eat them thing. But what you did have was an invisible energetic exchange that was infecting people. And a lot of the people who were zombies didn't even realize they were. In fact, most of them didn't realize it. And there was a system in place that everybody believed that if you took these little white pills, these little white circular pills, that it would protect you from that. And that's how society was run, on these really expensive white pills that everyone was convinced they had to take. But the twist is that it was a placebo. So it only worked because everybody believed that it worked, or the majority of people did. So on one level, you had this really profitable financial scheme going on, right? Which in its own way is a system of control, obviously. But at a twilight level, you had an overall societal control mechanism, because in reality, this was just about knowledge that people forgot. They just didn't even know how energy exchange worked. This was going on and they didn't realize that it was happening, pretty much. But everyone was really unhappy. Not only were the people being purposefully kept ignorant about how this energy exchange worked, but they basically kind of believed whatever they were told about this. And a lot of that had to do with how most of what they were told from the time they were very little was negative and scary. And it basically kept them all living in not a continuous state of fear, but a perpetual on-again, off-again fear. The kind of fear that it gets injected every now and then, and you don't know when it's coming, but you're always a little bit on guard for it because it eventually always does. So you're just kind of always waiting around for the next shoe to drop, but you don't know when that's going to be. So it's a type of conditioning. And everyone was just basically living kind of a half-life, mostly pretty unhappy, feeling like their life went off the rails somewhere, they were living the wrong life, but everyone just kind of explained it away to each other, which is another bad program, essentially, but they just kind of explained it away. This is how it is. This is just how it is, everyone, And so it's like a mutually reinforcing learned helplessness. Anyway, it was a bad situation. And it had been this way for so long, people didn't realize it. And I was one of those people. I was in the dream. I'm running around, running away from people and trying to find these little white pills and stuff. And I find one of the little white pills on the ground in the dream, but I I reached out to grab it with my hand and I didn't get to it fast enough, right? So the zombie grabs my arm before I can grab the pill. It's like, oh, I almost had it. So I didn't take it fast enough to protect myself. But in that moment, I realized one fundamental thing about it, that it just was a totally unfair system. It's just totally unfair. And in the dream, I was like, this bullshit. This cannot possibly work this way. This is just simply not true, And I looked at this person who was attempting to do this to me, and I just thought no, just thought the word no. And it was just like Neo in the Matrix kind of moment. In this dream that I had, just nope, sorry, I'm just not, I refuse to think that way. Just whatever, you can think that way, and I'm sorry that makes you so unhappy, but I'm not going to do it. I'm just not going to. So now what? And in the dream, it didn't work. The energy transfer did not happen of the mind virus. Like, it just didn't happen. It was like I blocked it, right? And that was the whole thing, because it was all based upon belief. And when I didn't believe, my whole reality changed. So that's the dream. And it's interesting because when I woke up, my first thought was Santa. I know, that's a strange segue. So now we're going to talk about Santa. And I'm going to make an example out of a modern day annual society ritual for the purposes of a metaphor. And I fully recognize right away there are going to be some people who get really mad about that. Get all emotionally kerfluffled because I'm talking about the Santa. But I'm only asking you to take your personal feelings aside for a moment and just try to look at the bigger picture of what I'm trying to say here. If that doesn't work for you, maybe this message is just simply not for you. So I can only speak for growing up in America. But here, every single year, millions of parents straight up lie to their children about the existence of Santa Claus. The holly jolly big fat red man who rides around on flying reindeer on Christmas giving out presents to the good girls and boys who lives up in the North Pole, and we all get together as a group, a large majority, and we impart this society-imposed lie to our kids every year. I mean, I did this before I ever decided to do any research into what holidays are. And by the way, if you got free time on your hands at all to do some reading, you might want to take a look into some of these things we celebrate as holidays. It is extremely fascinating to take a look at where some of these holidays actually, what they're based on, where they come from, what the pieces of the ritual that is being performed are meant to symbolize. It's actually very, very fascinating that people they do these things. They don't even know what this stuff stands for or where it comes from. It's incredibly interesting. But anyways, back to Santa. This is a time-honored rite of passage for our young children where they figure out that not only was all of society colluding in a gigantic lie for years and years, their whole life up until the point where they figure it out. So from the time that they exist until the time they figure it out. But they figure out that their parents actually had to go so far as to play actors in the lie. That's pretty far, right? Because they portray the child's personal Santa each year. They buy the gifts, they fill up the stockings, they get their kids to write letters to Santa who doesn't exist. Tell him you've been good and what presents you want, little Timmy, right? They take their kids to that oftentimes questionable dude who gets paid to dress up like the Santa and get his picture taken with hundreds of little kids each year at the local mall. They even do that thing where they leave out the milk and cookies and they take a couple bites, right? So it looks like Santa did it. Make the lie extra convincing. I mean, let's just step back for a second and look at what I'm saying here. This is a massive head screw that gets delivered to each child who is put through this year after year after year till they figure it out. But people pretend that that's just fine. That's fine. That's fine to do. It's normal. That's a normal thing to do, okay? In this society. In fact, if you're a parent who doesn't want to lie to your kids that a jolly old fat man who lives in the North Pole is watching them all year in order to decide whether or not to give them presents, well, good luck, okay? Because pretty much everyone else in your child's life, pretty much everywhere else that they go in this society, those people do participate. And they will presume that you do, and if you don't, they will try to pressure you into it and act like you personally are a bad parent if you don't do it. And I actually know what that feels like. So this is a thing. And I know there are other people out there who know exactly what I'm talking about. This is an example, though. If you take all your feelings out of it for a second, just think about the ritual of doing that. It's not just a myth, okay? It's not, and this isn't just imposing a myth on each new generation every single year. This is also an example of a massive deception, right? In which the majority of society actively participates annually in the name of the, quote, spirit of Christmas, right? Every major institution of society is basically in on it. The schools participate, even the ones that try to be politically correct about calling it Christmas or whatever, they still participate. They got the pageant where they have the kids sing all the holiday songs over and over and over, practicing and practicing over and over. Simplest form of brainwashing is repetition style, just hammering home that they better not shout, they better not cry, they better not pout. They're going to tell you why. It's because a big old guy in a red suit sees them when they're sleeping and knows when they're awake and apparently stalks them 24 hours a day, and he's coming to town, right? So basically it'd be like this scary threat from the realms of a horror film, except the kids get gifts out of it, so they look forward to it, but also accept all of that as the precursor to getting the gifts, you see. They accept that this is part and parcel of the situation. Like, if you want to get the presents, do you see what I'm saying? In a way, it's a little twisted. Because in what other universe is that scenario even remotely sort of okay? A grown man who plays dress up is watching your young kid when he sleeps and when he's awake. And then after months of dedicated 24/7 stalking, he breaks into your kid's house and leaves him gifts. Is that ever otherwise cool? It's never otherwise cool, is it? Like, you better not shout, you better not cry. No, I'm getting a restraining order. That's what in the hell I'm doing. Yeah, officers, that guy over there in the red suit who spends all his time stalking children, breaking in their house to leave them presents and talking about hoes. Okay? And the stores participate in this, like crackheads want crack. They love it, obviously, because Christmas also means the big bucks. It's a huge consumer moment for this country. It's a big deal. They play that same cliche expected music on hypnotic buy stuff loop, you know, just continuously. And the store employees, from the door greeters to the cashiers, they especially like to ask the kids, what did you ask Santa for? So again, it's just one more place to get it reinforced because it's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's all over everything. And you can always spot the people who feel forced into this society-wide playtime because they're generally pissed off to be out at all. They're mad to be there. They cut people off in traffic and drive like jerks. They don't hold the door. When you see them walking past you in the store, they typically have a pained look on their face as if every step they're taking through the store is actually causing their hemorrhoids to become 1% more inflamed. But yet, there they are, still making themselves do it, right? And the stores prominently place all that decorative crap right up front, right? Because nothing says the holidays like covering your house in a bunch of plastic garbage made by people in China whose bosses have to put up that net around the building so they can't even die when they jump off of it because they want to commit suicide to escape their crappy job, otherwise known as modern-day slaves. I mean, that's what it is. That's what it is. And nobody wants to talk about it because it's the holidays. It's the season of cheer. So we're not supposed to point any of this stuff out, okay? But that's what's up. I mean, some people even line up outside on the designated Black Friday, right? They call it Black Friday, to beat the crap out of their fellow humans over $6 toasters made by the same slaves and call it good, like they really accomplished something for the privilege to demean themselves over some crap. Some cheap crap, because they got it for less than they would have paid for it otherwise, even though they already did pay, because they had to pay in their self-respect, or whatever last drop of it they had left before they went into that store and proceeded to behave like an animal over something worthless, okay? That's the thing. And the media obviously participates in this too. I mean, they just play that same set of Christmas movies over and over and over, which is just like the songs, but in movie form. Our government participates. Even freaking NORAD participates every year. Remember, they have that report on the news.
Coming up, it's Christmas Eve and Santa Claus is coming to town. How NORAD is tracking St. Nick tonight. This picture on Twitter saying they are ready to track Santa. Are you?
It's a very serious one. It's called NORAD, the North American Aerospace Defense Command. And each year, NORAD tracks Santa's movements across the globe in real time.
About how the North American Aerospace Defense Command has tracked Santa's flight.
This is a project that's run from an Air Force base in Colorado.
Good morning, Captain. So, first things first, how do you track Santa?
Good morning. So the same technology that we use to track things that come into North American airspace 24/7, 365 is the same way we track Santa.
Over the oceans, and he's coming now.
And it involves 1,500 volunteers taking calls and online messages, presumably from children.
So Rudolph has his bright nose and it emits a lot of infrared heat. So our satellites pick up on that and we can pinpoint where he is.
And here's a live look at the NORAD Santa tracker. It shows that Santa, as we mentioned, is headed toward Nova Scotia, Canada. You can see he's already delivered more than 4 billion presents so far. You can see more than 4 billion presents.
And then, once he gets into North American airspace, our Canadian and American fighter jets will go ahead and escort him as he makes his way on Christmas Eve.
There's even a website, because I took the time to look it up, which is sad to admit, but it's called noradsanta.org, which says on there, for 60 years, NORAD and its predecessor, the Continental Air Defense Command, have tracked Santa's flight.
This has been going on since 1955. These days they have a 3D app to show you where Santa is.
follow Santa as he makes his magical journey. For 60 years, they've been lying to people about this. You know what I'm saying?
Lots of kiddies out there ready to track Santa.
Ready for the presents.
Wow, that's more decades than I've been alive. They've been lying to people about tracking Santa's flight.
One of NORAD's generals took this joke a little bit too far, though, I think. Now, he said that the military are monitoring Santa 24/7 with radars and satellites, and, quote, if we can track Santa that closely, imagine what else we can track.
Lots of kiddies out there ready to track Santa.
Ready for the presents.
Which sounds a bit ominous to me. Better watch out, kids.
It is ominous, of course, but if you have a cell phone in your pocket, which I assume Santa does have, then it can be tracked by Apple and Google as well too, right?
Then it can be tracked by Apple and Google as well too, right?
Every aspect of society plays a role in this. This is how far and high and wide and deep this ritual is embedded in. That's how baked in this set of seasonal rituals are. And when you say you don't want to do it, it makes other people mad because they've done it to me. People get mad when you don't participate in this. And people actually attempt to bully other people into participating when they don't want to. That's the level it gets taken to. And I honestly don't really care what 1,000 Harvard-trained psychologists claim about the total mind F that is happening to these kids. But you got to think about what this herd practice actually does do. You take a kid, you get him to put his time and his effort, which is a form of energetic power, not just believing in something that's patently false, but having faith in something based on this reality of everyone around him encouraging him to do so, aka gaslighting and psychologically manipulating him into it.
Said I wasn't an elector, he said I was going out of my mind.
Not going out of your mind. You're slowly and systematically being driven out of your mind.
But why?
Because that's what it is. I don't tell yourself how cute it is all day. It still is what it is. That's what it is. So when he figures out that this is a lie, what is that actually meant to do ultimately? Just by the way, accept a massive deception at the hands of everyone? Every institution, every person he knows, they're all lying to him, not just once, not just twice, repeatedly, every year, all of the years of his life till he's figured it out. But that's just good holiday fun, right? Right? Such a massive ritual certainly has no subconscious after effects. Of course not. That's silly. It's just a little Santa Claus, right? I don't know though. I don't know about that. I don't think so. Because we got millions of people running around this society today who have insecurities about basic things like trust. And you're telling me that doesn't have a way of adding to that? Really? You don't think so? Not just about trusting other people, but trusting themselves. Trusting their own intuition, trusting their own gut instinct about reality. How about the millions of people who have been trained to accept a world where everybody lies to them? Just that's how it is for their own good, right? It's for your own good. It's for your own good because Santa and presents and stuff, But hey, of course, Bob down the street has learned helplessness and a passive acceptance that schools, the media, and the government lies. Of course, those institutions did it to him for 9 years when he was a kid. And he accepted it then, because what choice did he have? Not only that, but what else happens? Let's think about this. Let's just keep going. Why not? This child has been group hazed for years, right? And then told that he or she can't tell the other children because it might ruin it for them. Ruin what? The experience of having your hopes and dreams shattered of something you believed in being false, and that everyone you know and everywhere that you go to, your teachers and your freaking people at the store down the street and the news, everyone's lying? Like, what? You're going to ruin it for someone else? Bummer. That's terrible. Yeah, but that's what happens. It's like, shh, don't tell. You can't tell anyone else. It wouldn't be fair to them for you to tell them, little Timmy, that what you know, you got to keep that to yourself. So then the child gets inducted into this club of lying liars who lie about Santa. That's what it is. And then they just perpetuate this massive lie. And they also then become complicit in gaslighting and psychologically manipulating their friends and other people at school because they were just trained on how to do that. It was done to them for years and years and years. And now they have been told to turn around and do it to other people. So in one false swoop, they're going to pass that program down. So it's not just going to stop there. It's going to also eventually be his own children and just carry on that tradition. Then his kids will do it, and that's just how it'll be. So it's actually not even little Timmy's fault. It's actually little Timmy just accepting the reality with which he was presented as a child at a crucial time when something like that would affect somebody on a deeper subconscious level than it might at a later time when they're older and have had the chance to get more life experience against which to bounce a situation like this off of. And just by the way, if you haven't watched the 90s sci-fi film Dark City in a while, the one with Kiefer Sutherland, now's a great time to check that one out. Because that's what that movie is about, this concept. This situation also trains the kid early on, by the way, that having faith in things they cannot see is just utterly ridiculous because that's all make-believe and totally made up, despite the fact that we only see a tiny slice of the visible spectrum, everything vibrates, and we're to a point now that even our Department of Energy secretary is going on TV shows and admitting they work in multiple dimensions, okay? That's the level.
I don't know if you ever saw Stranger Things. Have you guys paid attention to this phenomenon? On the show, they have a Department of Energy, and they spend a lot of time investigating a parallel universe. What can you tell us about that?
I will note that actually we do work in parallel universes.
What? Do you really?
Is that
yes.
Even Joseph Campbell is quoted as saying that the basic theme of all mythology is that there's an invisible plane that supports the visible one. But think about what the Santa myth actually does. What it actually does. It gives kids what they feel is access to this, what in their young minds they believe is this invisible world, only to then violently yank it away when the jig is up as if that's just that. And that just proves it was all not true to begin with, and they should just stay firmly rooted in that 5 sense reality. Seeing is totally believing about everything, right? Just anchor yourselves right there in the 5 sense reality of hardcore scientific materialism, which, by the way, really helps people fit in our modern society. It's a really good training program for fitting in the society that we're living in right now. And that right there is a big reason why the practice of this mass ritual is so encouraged. I mean, again, if you were from another universe and you had never heard of Santa Claus before and you came here and you witnessed this as someone totally alien to this practice, you would think that we were all completely insane for doing this to our children and ourselves every year, right? That this is not only continued, but it's encouraged. And if you try to get out of it, you're considered somewhere on a spectrum of really weird to a bad person for not wanting to uphold basically a society-imposed massive deception on your children. But my point isn't even actually about Santa or society's modern-day automated celebration of the Christmas program. My point is that this is an example of a program. And you'll notice that it's the kind of programming that is handed down generationally. So one person does it, they turn around and do it to their kids, and then they expect their kids to do it to their kids. And then their kids do it and turn around and do it to their grandkids. And this is just one example. It does not stop here at all, okay? There are lots of things that are based on what I'm talking about right here. Just these baked in programs. They get put in there, and people don't even realize they're in there, and they just run. They just run automatically. Person would have to actively, consciously stop them in order for them to stop. Because they're just on a subconscious kind of autopilot, these things. They just keep playing out. But meanwhile, the power of positive thinking has been turned into this, new age cliche. Regardless of the fact that it obviously works and has all kinds of merit. I mean, without it, you wouldn't have things like placebo effect. There'd be no effect. There just wouldn't be an effect at all. Ah, but there is an effect. Now, why is that? That's the question. It's one of the ultimate questions, actually. I feel like. I have a lot more to say on this, but I feel like maybe right now is a good stopping point because I've just been blabbering for half an hour. I think I'm going to pick back up with this in the next video because there's a movie I watched recently and I really want to share some thoughts on it with you guys. Anyways, I love you. I'll talk to you soon. And for the record, this video actually wasn't about Santa.